Welcome back to Andersen Acres. We're in the kitchen again, and today we are making a bread that my kids just love. We're making tropical potato bread. This bread is light and sweet, and it has a delicious sugary topping. These are definitely a dessert bread, but everyone loves them. Absolutely everyone. I've never met anyone who didn't like these. So these are a lot of fun. Let's get started. First thing we're going to need, 1 to 2 tablespoons of butter. You can use margarine if you like. This bread is so flavorful, you won't notice. We're going to add 1 egg. Yes, that's one of my own chicken's eggs. They laid a few eggs today, despite it being January. It's not December anymore, it's January. What's wrong with me? 1 teaspoon of salt. Yeah, it's January now. That's ridiculous. It's 2023. That's not good. Now, this is pineapple juice. Okay? This is pineapple juice. We're not using water. This is what gives the bread its unique flavor. We are using only pineapple juice, no water. And you'll notice I didn't put any sugar in there. That's because this is what sweetens the bread. You don't need any sugar. And there's going to be a sugary topping anyway on your buns. So we're going to do 1 cup plus 2 tablespoons of water. Not water, pineapple juice. Okay, 1 cup plus 2 tablespoons of pineapple juice. You do have to add those extra couple of tablespoons. And here's why. This is 1 cup of potato flakes. It's not a potato bread if we don't have potato flakes or mashed potato. You can use mashed potato, but that'll introduce extra water to your bread. So if you're adding mashed potato instead of potato flakes, cut back those 2 tablespoons of liquid, right? This is 3 cups of regular flour, just your all-purpose flour or your bread flour, depending on what you're using. There we go. 3 cups of flour. 1 heaping teaspoon of yeast. I'm using bread machine yeast. You can use bread machine or quick rise. We are making this in our bread maker. If you're going to make it by hand, you would use a traditional yeast and dissolve it in your water first. But I'm using my bread maker because I have nothing else in the bread maker and I have 2 other things I have to make by hand today, so I'm not making this by hand. So that is it for our ingredients. We are going to pop it in the bread maker. We are going to let it mix, let it knead, let it do its first rise. Then we'll come back to shape our rolls. All right, our tropical potato dough is ready to be shaped, but we don't need it right this second. Put it over there. We need to get our cake pan, about 9 by 13, something like that. It doesn't really matter. You just need a pan to put your rolls in so that they have some structure, so they don't go all over your cookie sheet. Now I'm just using a cooking oil spray. You can use a butter spray. This one's canola oil. You can use olive oil. It doesn't matter. As long as it's a spray. So we're just going to spray down our pan. This is a glass pan, so we do have to spray pretty well to avoid any sticking. Don't overspray, but you do want to give it a generous coating. Set that aside. Now we are going to divide our dough into 12 roughly equal pieces. Okay, so first we're going to divide it into 2. Divide each of those 2 into 2, so now we have 4. And then each of these 4, we are going to divide into 3. So then we have 4 equal pieces. There we go. Bring our pan back. So I'm just going to use my hands this time instead of using my cutter the entire time. But 1. I divide them and put them on here because I need a little more from this final ball just to make them all the same size. There we go. Or roughly the same size. Exactly the same size is not that big a deal. So we're just doing a total of 12 in our pan here. You can do 15 if you like. They'll end up slightly smaller, obviously, but I'm doing 12. We do have a topping to prepare, but I'm not putting the topping on now. We put the topping on after they've risen for the second time. So once you've got all of your buns sitting in here, you're going to set this aside to rise. You can set it aside to rise anywhere that is warm and slightly damp. If you don't have somewhere that's slightly damp, cover it with a damp tea towel because that introduces moisture. You don't want these to dry out. If these dry out, our dough will not rise properly. We don't want it getting kind of crusty on the top. You want your dough to stay soft and pliable. So you're going to want to make sure to keep moisture locked in. I typically set my breads aside in my microwave to rise because it's an area that keeps a fairly stable temperature and it doesn't allow humidity to escape. So I do that a lot, but you don't have to do that. If you absolutely don't have a better option, just find the warmest spot, as long as it's not hot, warmest spot in your house where you can keep a little bit of humidity. So you could put it near a heat vent, but heat vents tend to dry things out. So if you're putting it near a heat vent, I would absolutely use a damp tea towel over top, just to make sure that you don't have any particular problem with moisture loss, because if these get dry, they're not going to turn out very well. Now you can really smell this dough because I used pineapple juice instead of water for my liquid, so you can actually really smell it. I know you can't, you're watching a video, but I can smell it. It smells a lot like pineapples. So this is a really nice fruity bread, really great dessert bread. So there we have it. We're just going to set that aside to rise, and we'll come back in about an hour till they double in size, and then we will bake them up. All right, so our buns have risen up. They have about doubled in size. They're looking really good. Now we have to make our topping. We are going to need some melted butter. You do need to make sure this is butter. This part you need butter. Margarine will not cut it. So this is about 3-ish tablespoons of melted butter. So you take 3 tablespoons of butter, melt it in your microwave. Real easy. Then you're going to take about a 1/4 cup of sugar, put that in there, give that a good mix. Okay, you want your sugar in there. Yeah, this is great. Make sure all your sugar gets wet. You don't want some dry sugar sitting in the bottom, which does happen if you don't mix it properly. I'm just using my basting brush to mix because that's what I'm using to apply. Then you're going to want some cinnamon. I'm doing about a 1/2 teaspoon, but really you do cinnamon to taste. If you don't love cinnamon, then you don't have to use very much. Okay, now we need a little bit of nutmeg. Nutmeg, you don't want too much, maybe 1/8 to 1/4 teaspoon. Nutmeg can be a little bit overpowering if you do too much. There we go. Mix that in. I can really smell the cinnamon and nutmeg. Mix, mix, mix. You are going to preheat your oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit while you're doing this. Okay, 375. Mix your topping. This is our topping. You can leave the cinnamon out if you like, but I am doing a cinnamon topping. Now we're going to take our buns and we are going to top them with this topping. Be generous. Be generous. It's supposed to be sweet. There we go. Be generous. We like this. So you don't have to do the cinnamon. If you don't love cinnamon, you can just do the sugar. You don't have to do nutmeg. You could do cloves instead. But you do need the sugar. This recipe is designed to have this sugared topping. If you leave it out, you really just have pineapple rolls. This is designed to be nice and sweet. Remember, it's a dessert bread. So get this all on there. Use it up. Use the entire amount. Even if you go back and put it on some of the ones you kind of skimped out on a little bit. We want to get lots of this on here. Okay. We'll go back and add a little bit more to some of the ones that didn't get as much. There we go. Get all the sides, all the exposed areas. You want these sweet and delicious. Okay, so we're going to use it all up. No big deal. There we go. Now we're going to pop this in the oven, 375 degrees Fahrenheit, remember. And we're going to cook them for about 25 minutes. So we will come back in about 25 minutes and check on our tropical potato rolls. And there we have it. Our tropical potato rolls are finished. Remember, these are a dessert bread. They do have this nice sugary coating on top, so they are excellent after a meal or with coffee or tea. They're also really fun to serve in the spring. People tend to really like them because they're really fresh because of the pineapple juice that is in the batter. So I hope you enjoyed making those with us today. Remember to let them cool for about 10 minutes in the pan before you touch them. We'll see you tomorrow.